Have you ever had a sense of being in the right place at the right time? Whether you put this down to chance or the mysterious workings of the universe, we're going to be exploring beautiful, synchronistic, satisfying moments in this podcast today. And I'm delighted to have with me Falcon Acamesis. Welcome, Falcon.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fabulous to have you as a guest. And I guess even just sitting here in this moment, we're exploring synchronicity and allowing those kind of prompts and leads to see where this conversation goes and to see what unfolds today.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when we're open to it, it really allows our intuition to bloom. And at that point, it's trust. And for a lot of us, we have self-trust issues, but I guess the doubt that, comes in is, for me at least, it's a sign of, inner work to do around self-trust. Because when doubt comes up, if our intuition is strong, then there should be, little hesitation in what we know we need to do.
It's interesting when I look at my own life and when I look at those times in my life when I felt most in synchronicity and flow, it's almost been those times where I've stepped out of my normal life as I know it, and I've just had to, for whatever reason, embrace, what is unfolding. Is that something that you've experienced and almost that you set up? Because I know you do these beautiful synchronicity walks where you take groups on these exploratory journeys to have these kind of conversations with the universe. Is that been your experience as well?
It has, Sarah, and I think it is the same for everyone because, universally we have comfort zones. Everybody does. And everything, and I mean everything that we currently desire that is not in our life is outside our comfort zone. So we do need to, test those boundaries and reassure ourselves, because ultimately that's what we all need, is a bit of reassurance. So yeah, these synchronicity walks that I run, they're interesting because people show up, maybe never have met me before, but I think if you understand how to intrinsically make people feel safe, and there are ways to do that, then people can allow you to be their guide and feel safe in an area where they may not feel safe doing something themselves. So they may not feel like going on a synchronicity walk on their own. They don't know where they're going to go. They don't know what they might get up to. They could find themselves in a dark alley. But as a group of people, especially with a confident leader, I find people follow me anywhere, including alleys, during these walks. So sometimes we lean on others in areas where we feel weak. And this is the whole point of healing work and growth. We understand where we are, so we accept, and we learn to accept where we are, because then we can start to actually get help and we can start to grow again.
I love that. And I love the way that you lead people into these walks, because I believe you're based in London, and you put up little signs in the cafes and kind of alternative cafes and areas around London. I feel really drawn to read what you sent to me about what you write there, or is that something you kind of know off by heart that you can mention?
Oh no, please feel free to read it. But yeah, I'm based in Scotland now, but I still come down to London once a month to run these events, because this talking about universality, this is an everyday experience for people, but a lot of people are more conditioned to call these experiences coincidences, whereas for me, they have meaning, and therefore they're more than just a mere coincidence.
And I feel it's the allowing ourselves, or setting up the conditions that way you can start to see these things, because there's magic in every moment. There's certainly magic in every day. But we're so in in our blinkered kind of thinking of what to expect from life that we sometimes don't see that magic. So I'm just going to read this and then we can carry on the chat. So this is what Falcon puts to kind of entice people in. So take a spontaneous walk across London with your intuition as your guide, and be open to having your path nudged at just the right moments to experience powerful synchronicities, such as, hold on, I'm going to scroll down. It's not a very big window. Such as timely meetings with complete strangers, being in the right place at the right time to witness the miraculous, discovering hidden realities that lead to delightful surprises, and scrolling down. And encountering magic around every corner. Well, I'm sold. I'm in. When's your next one?
Probably in September. And I want to mention what you said a moment ago was really profound. You said creating the conditions, because a lot of people are very used to going after fake control, where maybe something goes wrong and they say, well, I'm never going to do that again. That's fake control. Instead of realizing, yes, there are a lot of things that are outside of our control, but the things that are under our control are things like developing the virtue of courage, developing the virtue of continuous learning, of strength. So for me, creating the conditions, that's exactly what I'm doing with these synchronicity walks. I say to myself, okay, I don't want to control the walk because there's so much outside of my control already. So I want to get comfortable with the unknown. And I think that's, uncertainty is one of our core needs, to be honest. A better way to reframe it than uncertainty would be variety. And that's what these walks bring, if we allow it. But if we're overbearing, if we're too controlling, if we project our need for safety onto the walk, then we're going to experience, much of the same. Wherever we go, there we are. And if our core need is safety, then we're going to need a lot of things to happen that make us feel safe before we can take those steps. So for me, I bring dice to the walk. It's inevitable when people gather at the beginning, somebody will say something along the lines of, so what's the plan? Just out of curiosity. I love curiosity. To me, it's like a cheat code for reality, just being curious. And I'll say to them, well, the only plan, and I'll reach in my pocket and I'll pull out 2 red Las Vegas style dice and I'll say, this is the plan right here in my pocket. When we get to a street corner, we don't use our preferences. We might look one direction and say, oh, look, that's very well lit. We're going to go that way. Or we look the other way. Right. Oh, that's very dimly lit. I don't want to go that way. It's either we let love guide us or we let fear guide us. And for a majority of our lives, we've allowed fear to guide us. So for these walks, it's out of our hands. We get to a street corner. Let's say there's 4 different directions to go. Then I'll say to people, okay, if we go left, if we roll 1 through 3, we go left. If we roll 4 through 6, we go straight, and so on. And so therefore, it's now out of our control. And this allows us to get deep down the rabbit hole. And speaking of rabbit hole, one of the elements to the walks are, let's say we're standing in a place of confusion. And I like confusion because confusion is a fertile ground for growth. So let's say that for some reason we roll the dice and it's confusing in some way. And instantly, maybe somebody walks by, a stranger walks by that is wearing something really unusual. Maybe they're wearing all yellow, and maybe they have a football jersey on that has our group number. At the beginning, we roll the dice to get our group number. And let's say on a particular roll, our group number is 6, and somebody walks by with the number 6 on it. They're our white rabbit, and we're instantly going to be drawn to them. So we will surreptitiously follow them. We don't want to get in their face. We don't want to get in their energy. We don't want to, make them feel awkward. We want to politely, follow behind them for a short period of time, just to allow ourselves once again to let go, but still be connected with other people. But again, without disturbing them, if you like, because there is still a social contract, whether, you know, we like it or not.
Sure, of
And I think
course. You
most of
don't want
us,
to feel like someone's being stalked or something like that by a group of people.
yeah, true. And I think, you know, when you get good at this stuff, you can read people's energy as well. You know, it's very rare that we get rumbled by the white rabbit, you know, again, because we're respectful. And I
Yes.
believe, although, you know, same in spiritual circles, same as all social circles, fundamentally, a majority of us share the same values. We just have different belief systems. And it's those different belief systems that are either aligned with our values or they're not. So for me, it's always checking in with myself on these walks. Is what we're about to do aligned with love, aligned with my values? If they're not, then, you know, I don't even really have to check myself in most
Sure.
cases. This is
Yeah.
very automatic for me. I know what's right and wrong. And even in spiritual circles, sometimes, you know, people say, well, there is no right or wrong. Well, maybe in absolute reality, there isn't. But in a reality where we're experiencing duality, we are learning duality. And this is just part of the lesson.
And it's through your own internal compass, you know. It's not, ultimately there might not be, but you know, in terms of what you want to align with yourself and your own principles, we have to put it through those filters. Otherwise
I agree.
we're just being thrown about by the universe. Then, you know, that's what is kind of, that is the navigation tool in a way, you
Yeah,
know, to
for
set
sure.
that compass, you know.
I absolutely agree. You know,
But
I
then
think,
to play within that, like you're doing, is very, very powerful. What's coming up for me, because I have my own form of playing with synchronicity, because I work with muscle checking, and I have a map that's like this is within my work.
yeah,
And I have a map that acts as a navigation tool. It's a multi-dimensional map that enables ourselves to go right down to a cellular level, or to zoom right out into the planets, or, you know, wherever you want to go, and then combine these things to make changes within the consciousness. So in a way, I think what we're doing is very similar, you know, but I'm doing it sort of within consciousness, you're doing it within consciousness, I'm doing it within consciousness within healing framework. You're also doing that, but it's kind of, it's that playing that actually out in the world, walking the streets of London, which I love, you know, that's really fabulous. But ultimately it is that playing, isn't it? It's that, because when I tune into that kind of field, for me it's important to have a framework, because then the left brain is happy. The left brain goes, okay, I can relax here, you know. It's like, this is what's going to happen. There's a yes, there's a no, or there's a number 6, or, you know, whatever the framework might be. And then the right brain, the intuition, can kick in, and it gives it that permission, because we've set that framework of, okay, we're not going to be going really stalking close to people, or, you know, you've set some boundaries, you've enabled people to feel safe by working in a group if you're going to be going down alleyways, etc. So that's like absolutely key. Would you agree that kind of
oh,
setting up that framework of what can and can't happen? So the rules of the game, in a way.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, as I often say at the beginning of these walks, um, for me, you know, something like synchronicity doesn't play by mortal rules, because a lot of the times, you know, the rules, we can look at the rules and we can think, okay, those are something, what's the expression? Something can be uh, legal, but not lawful, and the other way around. You know, sometimes
Yes,
things seem
yes,
unfair.
absolutely. Yeah,
So, you know, I think I guess what I'm saying by saying, you know, synchronicity doesn't play by human rules, it's almost like saying, you know, and this might be a trigger word using the word God, but as far as I'm concerned, it's realizing that, you know, God doesn't take sides, or a consciousness doesn't, let's use consciousness. Consciousness does not take sides. And, um, you know, that reminds us that we are therefore responsible for our own actions and the choices we make. And that is fundamental to me. Um, you know, consciousness doesn't look at a war that's going on and thinking, oh, I'm going to take their side. You know,
yeah,
these things are far more nuanced than that. So therefore, I think it's up for us to, like you mentioned, you know, if our inner compass has been calibrated, north, and that North Star is love and compassion and kindness and
Yes.
all those things, then we're going to be guided, by that. And I think the only reason we're guided by, something else, let's say self-hate as an example, because a lot of us have operated from that level, in our lives. It's just part of the human experience to have, experiences that make us, feel that darkness. And, for me, it's asking myself a question, am I ready to align myself with love? Because the alternative is fear. And those are the two dominant narratives within our world right now. So
Yes.
again, for me, it's experimentation. Some of it has to be experimentation. But I think this is why, we have this, I guess, what you could call the soul school for duality, because it is giving us an opportunity to learn. And it's almost like these old cowboy movies where at the very end they say no stunt horses were hurt, in the making of this film. Fundamentally at our core, we are spiritual beings. And, we are learning from this. And one of my personal powerful lessons is from a young age, I had what you could call out-of-body experiences. And you could align these with near-death experiences. So people who report having these powerful experiences where they're given almost like what you could call a life review. So this is taking place before death, before that transition into the afterlife. And they're reporting that at no point are they feeling judged. But what they are being allowed to feel is, let's say, for example, they're being shown a life experience where they hurt somebody. They're being allowed to feel exactly how the other people in that situation felt.
Yeah.
That is a powerful experience. And then you have the flip side of that. They're not, in these experiences just showing you what, you could say, you could improve in this area. They're showing you areas where you've inspired people and how that made people feel, and showing you fundamentally how that changed that individual and what that led to next. So, going back to, what you said, yes, I absolutely agree. And again, for you, this is a healing modality where you work from. And for me, this is outright playfulness and
I
learning,
love it.
learning not to take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
And, in the body of these walks, that comes up a lot. It pushes people's buttons. And it could be in a simple way, like on the last walk we did, on one of the dice faces. I always modify the dice in some way. So on one of the faces of the dice, it might say something like, now as a group, individually, you will act as your power animal. And we will act that out in the real. And so you've got people who maybe a wolf is their power animal. And they're now going to have to get down on the ground on all fours and be primal in public. And that's going to trigger them.
Yes.
So we have that on a regular basis. But, as a guide for me, let's take one example. So on the beginning of this one walk, we rolled the dice to get our group number. It was the number 4. And then within 20 minutes of being guided down, the rabbit hole with number 4 as our breadcrumb trail, like our psychic, energetic breadcrumb trail. Every time it appeared, we followed it. Even if we're about to roll the dice and we see a number 4 occur, we follow that. And a great example on this walk was we were about to roll some dice, and somebody looked up and noticed we were just underneath the number 4 bus stop. And so it clicked in me instantly because of my playful mind. I said to people, okay, great. So this is alignment. This is resonance. So if the number 4 bus comes, let's say within like a minute, we get on the bus, and you could just instantly feel the tension in people. They're thinking, I don't know where that bus is going to go. I don't know how many stops, Falcon's going to make us, stay on the bus before we can get off again. I might lose my bearings. So all that fear starts to come up. But for me, that's a growth test. Somebody called it a fear test. But for me, I like the word growth test. So what was really amazing was the moment those words came out of my mouth, the bus came around the corner. It was almost like an instant challenge from the universe. And people didn't have time to go one way or another in their minds. It was just an instant reality. So pretty much everybody did. Everybody piled on the bus. We got on the bus, and for a moment, I allowed my mind to drift. And I drifted as far as a parallel reality, where in that reality, we took ourselves too seriously. A couple people might have moaned and we didn't get on the bus because of fear. What happened in our reality, in that experience that night, was the moment we got on the bus, it started to pour down with rain.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was in my mind. If we would have not trusted to get on the bus, if we
Yeah.
would have taken ourselves too seriously, we're now going to be drenched. So I'm viewing that parallel reality, and I'm seeing them all getting wet because they took themselves too seriously. So the trickster nature of consciousness came out to remind us, look, you just took yourselves too seriously. This wasn't a huge ask to get on a bus. Yes, it's a little bit outside of a comfort zone, but mechanically the bus is sound. The preposition behind the bus, get on it, you pay. At some point you get off. Even if you're uncomfortable, you can get off after the first stop. If Falcon says we're going 9 stops, but it's not in my hands. We got on the bus, we rolled the dice again, and it was 9 stops. So we went 9 stops. Uncomfortable or not, we went 9 stops. We pushed ourselves. We got off the other end, and the moment the door opened and we're getting off the bus, it stopped raining. It was
Wow.
perfectly timed. And again, it was a lesson to people, a lesson to trust and to equally not take yourselves too seriously. We got off the bus, and right there in front of us, somebody had plastered a big poster on the wall that read, "Wait here for further instructions."
Oh my
It
goodness.
it just completely and utterly blew all of our minds. I mean, including mine. I mean, I experience this stuff regularly,
Yes,
but
that's
for
pretty
for a
amazing. That's pretty
group,
aligned.
yeah, yeah, and that's exactly what it was, Sarah. It was absolute alignment. We had raised it was almost like gameplay, where you have, level 1 to 12, and we start off as level 1. So we're level 1 trolls, we're level 1 characters. And what we were doing there is because we trusted, the universe up leveled us, and we're now, it's like, okay, you passed that growth test. Let's see how much further you're willing to take this. Let's see how long you're willing to
Yes,
remain on this elevated plane of spiritual reality, based on that experience. And it was phenomenal.
that's incredible. I love this kind of thing. I mean, whilst you were talking, I actually remembered my own story in my 20s when I had a romance and the person was going back to New Zealand, and I'd sent them an email. They were going back the next day and they weren't seeing the messages, and I actually went and found them in London. Actually, they walked past the cafe. I was told to wait in this cafe, and they walked past. So it is really, I'm bringing this in because obviously you're doing this within the framework of a walk, but we can bring this into our lives, when we utilize this. It's like aligning that sat nav, and sometimes it's not. I'm not claiming that I could go and do that now or every moment. In that moment I was obviously very aligned with that energy, but it's a really powerful place to live from, it, and quite shamanic also.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with
Yeah.
that. And I agree with what you said with regards to, the idea of bringing this into our everyday lives. Because for me, these are synchronicity. It's nudges from higher
Yes.
consciousness. It's nudges. And, we all need this guidance, especially in this day and age, and for those of us who do have a spiritual dimension to our lives, to our thinking, then this is part of our reality, to see that the universe itself is like the internet. It's an interconnected reality,
It really is. And
you
that's
know?
known now in quantum physics as well. It's not woo-woo anymore. It's it's
Exactly,
it's it's
exactly.
science now.
So
Yeah.
something like deja vu becomes as much a reality as sending an email in physical reality. It's normal because it's interconnection.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to hear some of your hitchhiking stories. I was checking out your YouTube channel. I'll put the details of your channel underneath, and you've got some incredible stories.
I'll share one that I haven't shared very often, and it is not on my YouTube channel. It was actually when I was younger. So when I first started hitchhiking in my early 20s, I decided I wanted to hitchhike from Florida, which was my home state, to Alaska, which, is about as far off as you can get. It's so I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to go hitchhiking. I'm going to trust, and I'm going to see where this goes. And in those days, I didn't have a beard. I was always clean shaven. And part of it was appearance, because I knew people you know, if I'm standing on the side of the road, 6'4", a big guy, I had to look approachable. I had to look friendly enough. So I chose all the pathways to where that would be the case. So I was clean shaven. I kept myself tidy. My ritual was at least once a week, I would go to a laundromat. I would wash my clothes because I don't want to get in somebody's car and smell like I've been on the road for 2 years, because that's not very respectful for them nor me. It's a lack of self-respect. So I would go to the laundromat once a week. I would wash my clothes, and while I was there, I had an electric razor and I would shave. And this was my ritual for weeks and months. And then one day came out of the blue, my electric razor just stopped working. So,
Okay.
you know, it went in the bin. And the reason I had electric razor, because my face is so sensitive, my neck is even more sensitive. So if I use a straight edge or a razor, manual razor, I cut myself everywhere. I'm just too sensitive for that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to just start growing out a beard. And for most men, they start growing out a beard, it gets really itchy, and we're constantly itching. The skin is very irritable from that as well. So I go on the road and I grow it out just a little bit. And this guy picks me up, and I'm thinking daily about how I need another electric razor, but I just didn't have the funds for it. I'm on the road, and you know, I'm not in one place long enough to build up any savings. So I'm really trusting the universe is going to take care of my needs. So this one guy picks me up, and he's what's called a long haul drive. He's going quite a distance. You know, he was going something like 2 states in length. So I thought, okay, this is, you know, hundreds of miles. This is great. I can relax for a little while instead of, you know, short haul drivers. And so we were with each other for a day and a half. I slept in the car when he went and slept in a motel one night. And the next day, we're coming to that point where we're going to part ways. And so he pulls over the car and he says, I have one question for you. Why don't you just shave? Because he noticed for that day and a half we were together, it's just itching like mad. He goes, why don't you just shave? Surely that's very uncomfortable. And I explained to him, I had an electric razor a couple of weeks ago. It broke. I'm terrified of, you know, shaving with a regular razor because it'll just cut me all up. And he just laughed. And I hadn't told that to anybody, any of the previous drivers, and none of the previous drivers had, you know, asked me about, you know, itching and shaving. He was the only one. And he just chuckled to himself. And he said, let's get out of the car. And I want to show you something in the trunk. And immediately a red flag went up. I was like, why does he want to show me something in the trunk? You know, now I'm thinking serial killer. And so we go back to the back of his, you know, the boot. And I kind of stand back a little bit just out of personal safety. He pops the boot, you know, the trunk, and inside, and this is no exaggeration, no embellishment, there were 5 brand new boxed razors. And he was a salesman. And
Oh, wow.
this is one of the lines, you know, one of the things that he demonstrates to, you know, shops and places that he goes. And he was the only person in days who had asked me about, you know, this. And if he wouldn't have asked, you know, it would have been a crazy situation. But he did ask, and it became an even more crazy situation because he then said to me, just choose one. It's yours. It's my gift.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
You know,
Well,
and
that just shows how much we're looked after, you know, I mean, I think the Buddhists say that, you know, bread rolls will roll uphill if you're doing, you know, if you're kind of doing your practice. But
yeah.
to me, that was a similar sort of idea, you know, if you're in this kind of flow. I actually have a very similar story I'd just briefly like to share. I went up to London and I was helping on a Mantak Chia course. And in the next conference room, I happened to notice there was something about vortex healing. I picked up a flyer, thought this looks super interesting. I have to find out about this. I got home, I'm in the bath, and I hear go to Glastonbury. And when I came home from that event, I'd been on the event for about 7 days. Everything was a little bit out of kilter in my house. It was almost like I wasn't aligned with my family. It was like, and I couldn't really put a finger on it. Everything just felt a bit weird. So I say to my partner, I really can't explain this, but I have to go to Glastonbury. And he's like, it's getting dark. You know, like Glastonbury wasn't a long way away. It was like half an hour drive. And he's like, it's getting dark. What are you doing? I said, I'll take an overnight bag. Anyway, I'm driving around the streets and I got park here and I walked through these alleyway and saw these big wings and I knew that this is where I had to go. I walked through the door And it turned out the lady was one of the main vortex healers in the country. And when I explained what had happened at home with feeling out of kilter with my family, she said, you need to catch up. So she set it up to process through the night whilst I slept. And when I went home, everything was in alignment with my family. You know, it had all calibrated perfectly. So that was, to me, that was a beautiful synchronicity of just listening to that prompt, you know, of being told where to go and following it, you know. And we don't necessarily always follow those things, you know, particularly when it feels a bit strange, like going off when you've just come home to your family late at night, you know, that did feel a little bit strange, but for whatever reason, I totally had to follow it. So
that
yeah.
is beautiful. And I love what you just picked up on there, that fear that sometimes we don't always follow the guidance. But the
Yes.
beautiful thing about consciousness is this, you know, if we have a path that is meant for us, again, synchronicity comes into play, because synchronicity is exactly like a sat nav, like, you know, the navigation system, you know, that we depend on inwardly. If for any reason we doubt our inward guidance, then that externalized nudge from the universe is there. And what happens if we are going down the road and we've already programmed, you know, the sat nav, and we pass the street we're supposed to go on, or we get lost? What does it do intrinsically? It recalibrates, and we
Yes.
trust it
Yes.
completely. So even if we miss our turn spiritually, it will come up again if it's really meant for us, because that's how synchronicity is. It will act as that sat nav for us if we can't do it for ourselves. In times we can't do it for ourselves.
And I think particularly around I've just recently had my 50th birthday. I think particularly around our Saturn returns, we have big, strong calibrations. I'm feeling it at the moment. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, drawing you back in where you're meant to be. So
yeah.
Do you have any powerful techniques to help people to stay on track, you know, to stay on their path, so we're not taking these kind of meandering detours, as it were? Although that can sometimes be nice, you know, it's nicer, it's more powerful if we can stay in that alignment.
Well, I think for me, it's finding a single tool, and a tool that works for you as an individual, because I'm sure the same for you. You know, although you'd love to help everybody, that's just not how the system works. That's why there are thousands and thousands of spiritual teachers and facilitators, because let's say we were working in the same space. From my perspective, even working in the same space with you, you are not my competitor, okay? Because you are not me. You know, it's like in marketing. What is, you know, our unique selling points? You, Sarah, are the unique selling point, same as I am. I can speak to people in only ways I can speak to people. And it's the same for you. Only you can deliver messages that people can hear in a way that they will hear. And it's the same for me. Not everybody will hear me, and not everyone will hear you. So we need that diversity to create this unification of spiritual reality. And so I would say for people to experiment in the beginning, and then find that one technique that's really going to help. And I would say fundamentally, one that is going to be a good one for most people is going to be a breathing technique, because everybody has to breathe, and everybody's connected to the life-giving sun. And the life-giving sun is, you know, in our local system of consciousness, is the source of prana and chi. And that prana and chi, the sun itself, is further connected to a bigger source. So ultimately, it's all coming from the same place, but the sun is a powerful connection point for us in this reality. And we're not just breathing in air, we are breathing in prana, we're breathing in chi, life force energy. So fundamentally, we all need that. So for recalibration, you can't recalibrate the nervous system better than something like a good pranayama practice. So
Yes.
I would recommend people exploring breath work, finding a breath work practice that works for them, for where they're at, because some people have high blood pressure, some people have low blood pressure. So you have to choose something for where you're currently at and allow it to help you develop to where you want to go. I would say for a lot of people, a simple alternate nasal breathing technique will be a very good one. And And even it doesn't even have to be alternate nasal breathing, just something, let's say, for example, when you get triggered, the higher reasoning centers are going to shut down. We just move into that middle part of the brain. That's how it is, if the amygdala is, greatly underdeveloped in a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, what we can do in that moment, for me, I would use something like the Ho'oponopono, a Hawaiian spiritual tradition of healing, to where, and even maybe before that, maybe something just went through my head, some negative thought just went through my head. What I'll first do is I'll just say, classically, cancel, clear, delete, just to start to release the charge from that negative thought. And then I don't go instantly into default sort of mode. I don't go instantly into dysfunctional behavior. If I can catch myself at that point, it's almost like taking a 10-second count. I'll just go, oh, no, wait a second, cancel, clear, delete. It might have been a judgment about myself, might have been a judgment about somebody else. So I just cancel, clear, delete. I'll take a breath, and I'll just say, I love you. And I'm not saying I love you to anyone else but my own inner child. That's it. Okay. Because that's what got triggered, was me. And I have to realize there is memory attached to that triggering. I may not even know what that memory was, but classically in the Ho'oponopono tradition, we then realize it's for us to take full responsibility for clearing those memories. So I would then say, first, I love you. And this is just to bring myself in alignment with the inner child, that part of me that's feeling insecure, or whatever it is in that moment. And then I will make that appeal to higher consciousness after that. I will say, if it was a negative thought I had about a friend, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And that appeal is that's that appeal for my, saying, look, I'm sorry. I don't know what was in me that just caused that, but I'm willing to take responsibility for this. So I'm making amends. And then for me, it's that appeal to higher consciousness that is now allowing what the Hawaiians would call mana to flow. And mana is life force energy, chi, prana. And it's that life force energy that then is the powerhouse that starts that transmutation. Because as we both might agree, I mean, this is my belief, that, same as many, we can't destroy energy. It just changes.
Yeah.
And for me in that moment, I want to transmute that negative energy. I want to take responsibility for that. So that's what I'm doing with this, to me, this very heartwarming Hawaiian tradition. And at the very end, I'll bring in, the word thank you, which is my gratitude for realizing, it's gratitude for myself for remembering that I can do hard things. And it's gratitude to the universe for reminding me that I don't have to do hard things alone.
Thank you for sharing that. That's such a powerful technique, isn't it? It's so usable. It's something we can just pick up so easily if something arises. I'd love to ask another practical question. I happened to see your dice on your YouTube channel, and there were white rabbits and all kinds of things. Are they something that you give out to, so that people can use your dice to explore synchronicity, or do you buy them from a place? Because I'd love a white rabbit one to follow.
I would just say this. When I started that journey with using dice, I just used regular old dice, and I can get pretty complex with the dice these days, just by every facet of the dice, maybe I modify it. But I find sometimes the very best dice are ones that you don't change at all. You literally just apply, an idea to. So for example, like I said, if we get to a street corner and if there's only two directions to go, then 1 through 6 is left, 7 through 12 is right. I can use it as yes and no. So if I see somebody that could potentially be a white rabbit, instead of forcing it, I'll say, okay, I'll let the dice decide. So I could say even numbers are yes, odd numbers are no. And so I'm not forcing anything. Again, I'm just going with the flow. And if it is true synchronicity, it will be easy. It will be effortless. You'll have the green light and you can just go. So for me, I would just suggest to start with regular dice. And then when you become more creative, yes, start modifying a couple of those dice faces. One of my synchronicity videos, I actually walk people through every face that's on those dice. So, if people want to take a little, view of some of those videos, I can't remember exactly which one it is, but if they just watch a few of the synchronicity videos, the more recent ones, they'll find the one where I actually go through explaining the dice.
Thank you so much. I love that. And I'd love to hear another of your stories, because there was one I heard earlier when you reached a dead end. And, that's the moment for people, isn't it? In life, when we reach dead ends where we feel we're in the wrong place. But when you reach the dead end, you went into like hyperaction of like, where's the clue? Where are we going next with this? We must be here for a reason. Would you share that story? And also, I'd really love everyone at home to share your synchronicity stories, because they're so beautiful. I'd really love this video in the comments to be filled with beautiful stories. So there's the invitation there to really share.
And yeah, that is it right there, Sarah. Because you'll notice in the comments of these videos on synchronicity, you have people commenting from all over the world who are sharing their personal stories before they found me and personal stories after they found me. So stories, which were unique to them before, we started journeying together, and then them taking up dice on their own and doing their own walks. So the comments are filled with stories like that, which I think are beautiful because it's so inspirational.
Thank you so much. That's really, really powerful.
So this story that you're asking for. So on this walk, we rolled the dice at the very beginning. We got the number 2. So that became our group number for the night. And anytime we see it manifest, we follow it. And it started for us very simply. We just rolled the dice, got the 2. We start following 2s. We start letting the dice decide which way we go. We got to this one point where there was a little confusion. So I said, okay, we're going to even take it out of the dice's hands. What I want to do is we blindfolded somebody. They had an umbrella. We asked them to just spin like a top, and when it felt right, they were to stop. And they stopped, and the umbrella was pointing in one particular direction. And the moment they stopped and pointed in that direction, this man in a business suit walked out of the building. He walked right past the woman who was holding the umbrella, and he proceeded in the exact direction she was pointing the umbrella. So we thought, okay, this is double confirmation. So we're going to follow this guy. So we followed him in the direction that was meant for us. And he took us as far as in London, there was a crossroads of Regent Street and Oxford Street, which are 2 big intersecting points in London, 2 main roads. And he then went down into the underground, which is like the subway. And that's where we stopped and intuitively thanked him as being our temporary white rabbit. And we're now standing there. And we rolled the dice again, and we got the number 2 again. So we're like, okay, we look around. This bus passes us almost instantly. And the number on the bus was actually a letter and a number, and it was the letter C with the number 2. So reality was asking us to see the number 2. We already rolled the number 2. We're already looking for it. So it's just, again, it's double confirmation. So we're looking around. We can't see the number 2 anywhere. One woman then says to us, one of the group members says, look, there's 2 women standing on the sidewalk right there, 10 meters away from us. They're just speaking, and they look like they're in the Matrix because everybody else is rushing around them. There's thousands of people rushing around them, just pouring around them like water pouring around a rock that can't be moved.
Amazing.
And so I said, great, let's do that. So there's about 20 of us, and we go and we stand, the 20 of us stand in a circle around these 2 women. And the 2 women finally realize we're there, and they look around like, a little bit of shock. And I said, no reason to be alarmed. We're not tourists. We've been rolling dice all night. We've been following synchronicity, coincidence, just meaningful coincidences. And I said, the dice have led us directly to you. Would you do us the kindness and just choose by random a direction for us? And because we were standing by those 2 intersections, I thought she was going to probably choose one of those. But she looked around, and it looked very intuitive, and she pointed to an alleyway. And I love going down alleyways. So we thanked them. We crossed the road, and we regrouped on the other side. And the 2 buildings on the corner, there was 2 buildings on the corner of this alleyway. One of the buildings, the number of the building was 2222. We were like, that woman could have sent us anywhere. We
Yeah.
didn't, from our vantage point, you couldn't even read
Did you have to touch
street
her
numbers.
to make sure she was real?
By that time, that agent of synchronicity probably disappeared down a rabbit hole. Just that's how it goes. So we're standing there with our mouths open, thinking, this is just ridiculously powerful guidance. And the moment, I'm just sitting there, expressing this to people, this man runs out of the other shop on the opposite corner, runs out. It's got some stuff in his hands, and he's bolted down this dead end. Now, alleyway. This is not a dead end. This is just an alleyway that leads out somewhere. And then two security guards rush out of the same building. So this was a shop, a clothing shop. And they rush out and they're chasing him on. And this is obviously a shoplifter.
Right.
And I said to the group, that's our next white rabbit. We're following them. And so here we are now in high pursuit. This isn't just any old white rabbit now. This is a jackrabbit. This shoplifter was fast. He was not going to get caught. That was not his intention. And so you have the shoplifter running, you have the two security guards in pursuit, and then you got these 20 synchronicity, followers chasing after them. And we get maybe 100 meters, and some of the people in our group start to get breathless, because we have people of all ages.
Sure,
and
of course, yeah.
Yeah. And so I said, okay, we're going to bring it to a halt because I don't want to push people past their limits physically. That's not what this is about. So we stopped and I said, but let's continue in the direction where they're going. So they were in a straight line pretty much. So we're continuing down this road, and eventually we come across the two security guards who are standing there catching their breath. They were going no further. So we kind of just gave them a wink, and we continued on clearly in the direction this guy was still going, but we had no physical sign of him anymore. He was gone. We then came to an intersection where we could go one of two directions, or the alleyway, which was a dead end straight ahead of us. So we rolled the dice, and the dice led us into the dead end. So we went into this alley, which was a dead end. And I said to people, look, it's been about an hour and a half. This is in my books, this is a perfect end to the walk. And I really appreciate you coming out. And some of the people were grumbling. They were like, this feels like an anticlimax, all that beautiful synchronicity, and to end it on a dead end. And I said to them, look, if you really need the demonstration that this is not a dead end, then fine, we'll do it. I said, we look around, it becomes like a reality within a reality.
Yeah.
And it's only those that can see with their spiritual eyes will see the spiritual reality that is there for us to explore. I think the video you're referring to, in the walk that we were about to undertake, somebody on the glass wall had literally written in dust. There was dusty window. They wrote with their finger, "Lick me," and they drew a tongue. And I said to people during that walk, as I was explaining this story, I said, what if that sign, "Lick me," was written by a magic dwarf from like Lord of the Rings, that kind of figure. And that's now a dwarf door that only other magical beings can see. If that's the case, they're going to go up to that dirty window and they're going to lick it, and it's going to open up a door to a whole new realm. So I explained to them, this is how reality works. It's realities within realities. So if you can trust that this is not, a dead end, but even metaphorically, there's something here for us. So I said, start looking around. So we started looking around, and I noticed there was actually a doorway. And it was a doorway to a block of flats, so an apartment building. So I said to everybody, I gathered them all around. I said, look, there's a number 2 on here, number 2 flat. All that. I'm just going to push all of them. So I pushed all the buttons. And I can't remember what apartment let us in. I don't think it was number 2. That would have been, ridiculous to the sublime level. But somebody came over the intercom and said, can I help you? And I said, we're not tourists. My same spiel when I interact with a stranger. I said, we're not tourists. We're not synchronicity has led us here. We've been rolling dice. We've followed the breadcrumb trail of synchronicity, white rabbits. It's led us to your door. And then I went quiet, because at that moment, it's like they say in tennis, a tennis match, the ball's back in their court. You just have to wait now. So for me, I took one of those sacred pauses, because if I keep talking, nothing's going to come the other way. So I have to stop talking. So sacred pause, let the guy speak. And it was silence for maybe 3 or 4 seconds. And the guy then came back over the intercom and he said, well, then come on in. And he literally buzzed us in. 20 strangers. Who does that?
in a little flat. That's amazing.
An agent of synchronicity does that. So anyhow, so we're going up the stairs. We get upstairs. He opens the door. Him and his wife are standing there, and each one of them are holding a newborn baby. They're twins.
Oh.
And that's number 2. That's how our walk started, and that's how our walk ended.
Oh,
and
wow.
they invited us in. They made tea, coffee, cakes, and biscuits for us were brought out.
How gorgeous.
And it showed people, because the people that moaned when I said, we'll leave it here, it was almost like they're, okay, Todd, you showed us, okay, Falcon, you showed us enough signs tonight, but I need one more sign.
Right.
You know, those kind of people that all doubt should have been obliterated by that, up to that point. But somebody had that one last vestige of doubt, and it was blown out of the water, because the universe was just like, okay, fine, I'll give them one more sign. And that was an unmistakable sign to everybody who needed it to go home that night and realize that even on their way home, the synchronicity walk has not ended. You now have to see that this is an extension of your life, that synchronicity now becomes, you invite it to become an everyday reality for you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's been incredible chatting with you, Falcon. Do you have any last comments before we close up today?
Last comment. As I mentioned earlier, but I'll just be more clear with it. I've really enjoyed recently saying to people that the ultimate cheat code in my books for this level, this dimension of reality, is curiosity. Get curious as to why you keep getting triggered in certain ways. Get triggered to why, you know, a relationship might be unhappy. Get curious as to why good things happen. Get curious as to what is that sound as I'm trying to sleep, instead of going the whole night without getting curious, because you're not going to get a good night's sleep until you do. So in every good way, and what you could conceive, you know, ways that need to be looked at, need to be seen, look with curiosity. Even if it's somebody else who's angry at you, say to yourself, what am I still doing that is, you know, adding to this situation? So it's being curious and this, for me, this really aligns to the first principles of the Ho'oponopono again. What am I still doing that is causing this, or part of this situation? It's taking 100% responsibility for our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our actions. In my books, if the universe has brought something to your door, including an angry person, the universe is asking you to take responsibility. Obviously, you're not responsible for their feelings. You're not responsible for their projections, but you're responsible for what you do next. You're responsible for what that situation is missing, and that is compassion, that is kindness, that is mercy. That's what you can give in that moment.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really important. And also, you know, when we talk about responsibility, there's a heaviness to it, you know, taking responsibility, but by bringing that childlike curiosity, playfulness to it, it really changes the nature of that. So thank you so much. And yeah, it's been wonderful chatting with you. And thank you everyone for listening in, and do hit the subscribe button so you can receive more New Earth podcasts. Bye for now. And thanks again, Falcon.
Thank you, Sarah.